Okay, thank you all for your 8 minutes of time. Hopefully people took the opportunity to catch up on emails. We'll bring this commission meeting, this open meeting to attendance. We'll start with roll call of our commissioners. We'll start, I'll start, and then we'll go online. Commissioner Miller.
Commissioner Moore.
Commissioner Stout.
Commissioner Foster.
All right. We're on to roll call, then we'll do approval of minutes from February 12th, 2025. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 12th, 2025. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Moore. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, you can't vote.
Aye.
Actually, as long as everything's in open session.
Don't have it for speaker.
I think you got it wrong.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Do you think we're
moving on.
right?
He was on his way.
Okay, sure.
Solid decision making. All right, informational items. We'll go to item 3, which is president board updates. And I actually have no updates because last time we had such a jam-packed agenda, and we covered so much ground, that we really got to focus on our votes this round. So I will hand it to our executive director for her report, unless commissioners have any other comments that they'd like to make before we get into Gracie's report. Hearing no additional input or questions, we'll move it to Gracie. Thanks.
Thank you. And, all right, so here are our updates for, this meeting. So just under, if you recall, the rule changes on citizenship and marijuana were adopted by the Board of Commission on February 12th, 2025. In the spirit of rule adoption, these rules are now effective, but we are currently in the implementation stages. So we've got a few steps that we're trying to complete. So in the spirit of transparency, just letting everybody know, this week we're completing the updates to our posted rule on the website, which Jeanette has completed today, and she has notified all interested parties that the rules on the website has been updated to reflect the rule changes. And then we're also working on updating the booklets, the workday questionnaires, and we met yesterday at an all staff to discuss how we would proceed with the rule change implementation. So by March 3rd, we anticipate, actually it's March 1st, but it's on the weekend. We just anticipate that Workday will no longer automatically disqualify those who declare that they are not citizens. So that should go into effect. And then the informational booklets will be available for public to reference. And then between March 3rd and March 7th, that is when we will do a retrospective review of disqualified candidates between November 5th through current for potential reactivation, and then reactivate them. We've been keeping track of those candidates, but that will be the week that we will utilize in order to, again, take a closer look to ensure that there are no other disqualifiers, and then reactivate their application and move them along for consideration in the next steps. And then March 10th, we anticipate citizenship rule change is fully rolled out and implemented. Moving along on the next slide, please. Thank you. This is for the marijuana rule change. So because the rule was adopted on 2/12, initially we had anticipated implementation around June. But again, because it was adopted, it is thereby effective. So between 2/13 and 2/28, we are also working on updating the posted rule, which Jeanette has updated already on the website. updating the booklets, workday questionnaire, job aids, and then we met yesterday to talk through those initial stages of like internal protocols for us, for the staff. And then by next week or March 1st, similar to the citizenship rule, workday should no longer be auto disqualifying the folks who apply and declare that they have used, actually, we've updated the question. It's no longer asking them if they have used marijuana in the last 12 months, but it will reflect as of the date of their application. And then 3.3 to 3.7, same deal. We're gonna do a retro look on all the disqualified candidates. If you recall, we had said for marijuana rule change, we will not do a retro look, but because the rule took effect, the rule change was effective February 12th, we will then look at all the applicants that were disqualified beginning the date that the rule was adopted, which is February 12th. Yes.
Can I ask a question? Have we talked to recruiters about whether this is a message that we need to get out through recruitment about these two changes? Yeah. And if it would like help to send the message to, to make sure people understand the new rules.
Hi, Nate McGee here with DPD Recruiting. Yeah, we're keeping tabs on everything. So as soon as you allow us to, we will blast out as much of that information as we can, especially with our interest form, because we have multiple people coming in with our interest form with those disqualifiers. So as soon as you give us the word, yeah, we're ready to pass out the information.
Okay.
I just want to caution us to be like very strategic of that messaging, right? But by the numbers we ran with Tammy, Stephanie, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, from yesterday's meeting, we were looking at for police about 30 folks, right, from February 12th that could potentially be reactivated out of the rec. And then for EMT, we didn't have any because the rule was not effective when we closed the requisition. And then for fire also, we did not, because the rule was not effective as of the date of adoption. So we're really looking at police, and so we'll touch base with our recruiters, but we have been, just like Nate had said, we have been keeping them informed on rule changes, but this is somewhat of a change from what we had initially communicated, which was a June implementation. And then 3:10 to 3:15, that's the time we will develop the procedure in case of a positive drug screen result. So we're really focusing a lot of the implementation steps into the front end, right? Because we anticipate that the drug screen will not happen until maybe 60 to 90 days from now. So we want to make sure that we've got some thought out processes that we can bring back to the commissioners on the March 26th meeting on what that matrix may look like if, for example, a candidate tests positive. We're working with our drug screen vendor. We've got some information that we will be sharing with you. And again, the idea is that we can assess these positive test results in a straightforward, objective manner rather than have and leave it for some subjectivity. So we have that on the docket for March 26th meeting. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Nate.
Nate? Oh.
I just said thanks.
I'm here. Yep, I'm here.
Okay, no, I thought you had a question, but yeah, Commissioner Miller was just thanking you.
Oh, of course.
Next slide, please. Just updating everybody, Local 858, the fire department and civil service has been working together on this, but wanted to bring it forward or in front of the commissioners about the change in the procedure. So this isn't a rule change, but in the procedure. So the request initially came from, fire department requested that a minimum passing score for fire promotional multiple choice examination is determined prior to examination date. by practice historically that the minimum passing score for the multiple choice exam has not been set prior to the exam. It has, like, it's a cutoff score that was set after the exam. The rationale for the request was that, you know, there has been some concerns in the past about the fairness and equitability when you set the cutoff score after everybody has taken the test. In looking and reviewing of the rules actually say we may set the cutoff score, the minimum passing score after the test, which leads me to believe inherently you set minimum passing score before the administration of the test, right? But as a civil service, as an agency, we have the ability, we may, if we wanted to, set the minimum passing score or determine the minimum passing score after the administration of the multiple choice exam. So for context, a promotional exam for DFD has the following test components: a multiple choice exam, an assessment center, which includes an in-basket, a role play, and a tactical subcomponent, and then they also get seniority points. This request is solely for the multiple choice exam. The maximum score that they can receive on a multiple choice exam is 100, but then it's weighted at 32. Jeanette, correct? Right? 32 is the weight, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're saying here is that the request was to set the cutoff, the minimum passing score for the multiple choice exam at 70. And then if they reach 70 or above, then they can move on to the next round. The rule just explicitly says that the commission shall give appropriate consideration to the following in setting the scores: the minimum passing score recommended by the test developer, the minimum level of competence necessary for successful performance of the duties of the position, and the uniform guidelines on the employee selection procedures as updated and amended. So then Jeanette coordinated a meeting with the fire department, local 858, and the vendor selected to help us administer this promotional exam, the current one that's posted. The vendor has some concerns. Basically, their point of concern is that setting a minimum passing score may undermine sort of your pool of candidates. Agencies, according to them, should set appropriate cut scores. They call it cut scores. We call it minimum passing score. It's all the same. For selection assessments based on job relevant criteria and test difficulty to ensure that a chosen cut score does not result in adverse impact for members of protected classes. Using an arbitrary cut score for a selection procedure is likely to result in poor hiring decisions, along with being vulnerable for legal challenge. Now, in reading through the vendor's concern, because they sent us a sort of a document outlining their concerns, the concern is the point of contention isn't setting the minimum passing score before or after. It's setting a cut score, period. So, but what we're saying, we've always set a minimum passing score, but it was post the exam. So so to me, I understand what the vendor is saying, and that is sort of a similar sentiment by a lot of publications that I've read, is setting a minimum passing score really can undermine your pool and can put adverse impact on candidates. But at the same time, we're also in the business of setting standards, right, and threshold, and ensuring that those who move on to the next round is eligible under clarified expectations. And so to the vendors, sorry. So, according to them, also the uniform guidelines of employee selection procedures state that cut scores or minimum passing score should be developed based on the level of knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary for acceptable job performance, and that cut scores must be based on clearly articulated job relevant considerations. So, when, and I'll call on Jeanette here shortly, when they met, the vendor essentially supported, it's sort of, you know, if you really wanted to, we can support you. It's not, setting a cut score is not something that we typically recommend. But both the department, local 858, looked at the previous results, 21 and 23. And, I mean, the job posting, the KSAs desired and being tested are all relevant to the job. So they've agreed on a 70% cut score or minimum passing score, which I personally support. In 2021, taking all of the candidates, there were 61 who passed. No, 24. So there were 61 candidates, 24 out of the 61 received the 68.07, which was the cut score that was set in 2021. In 2023, they set the cut score at 75, the minimum passing score at 75.83, and 31 out of 59 candidates passed. So if I didn't confuse you, basically, I supported the idea and the request. I support the request of setting the minimum passing score before the multiple choice exam. That way, it's all laid out, everybody knows what they need. And to be honest, it encourages people to do their due diligence to take that exam. This is a promotional exam, and setting a minimum passing score is the same practice as what we have even with entry level, with our written test. But obviously with anything that's new, we want to monitor what that impact may be after. I don't think it's set in stone, but if that is what the department and local 858 supports, I see no reason why civil service wouldn't support, but we just need to be mindful of, what those impacts may be and come back to the table.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I understand all this. Sorry, I've been crazy this week. So the recommendation is to set the passing score at 70.
Minimum
and-
passing.
Before, so everybody knows what the passing score is. So the harm that some fear is that if they know that the passing score is 70, they might not take the test because they don't think they can achieve 70.
No, what the vendor is saying, and Jeanette, correct me if I'm wrong, is that arbitrarily setting the minimum score before the administration of the exam, you might be adversely impacting the pool of candidates.
How?
You could get no one to pass 70.
Okay, but that doesn't make any sense. I get that, but that doesn't make any sense. Like you said, you're trying to set standards. Like everybody knows, we've all been to school. We know what an A and a B and a C and a D is, right? We know what that is. So as I've said before, anybody that's been doing a job in the fire department for years and thinks they're eligible for a promotion should understand how to do the job so they can achieve a 70. Come on. Like, there's just no way that we should allow a person that gets a D, the equivalent of a D, to be promoted. Personally, I think you should have an A or a B if you're going to be supervising other people. So I mean, there's no way that it should be below that. And there's no way that, we should be adjusting the passing score to help a certain individual or group of individuals achieve a promotion, period, as far as I'm concerned.
Promotional score setting has been, Jeanette, do you have a comment there?
I did share Commissioner Moore's.
We can't hear you.
process. I've shared your thought process with Local 858 and DFD when we had the meeting. So they are aware of your concerns of setting the cutoff score to 70%.
You mean that I favor that?
But no, that you don't favor that.
Okay.
that it's your preference that we don't set the bar so low. That it's not fair to the person who does study harder and who's at 100%. And then it somewhat kind of shows that people who are at 100%, they studied really hard and they did everything that it took. And then there's the person at 70% who maybe didn't study as hard or doesn't know as much, and they both get to go to the dance. And it just seems like, I shared your perspective and I understood it, but I think that they were set with 70% because of what the cutoff score has been throughout the years.
Yeah, the only thing I'm saying is I just want the highest reasonable score for a
I
promotion.
agree. I agree.
And 70 is better than 60, whatever that number that you said, that's better than that.
Right.
I certainly wouldn't go below a 70.
Here's the other issue with that, if I may. You know, if we set it up to, you know, if we would have raised that up to 80% and only 20 people had, and you know, 80% or above, then we would only have 20 people going to the assessment center. Well, I mean, that's 11 less than we had last year, right? But they could actually go through that list and promote all of, you know, all of those 20 people in that time period of the next exam.
So I appreciate you sharing my concern about just cup
Mhm.
scores in general.
Sure.
I don't have a problem with 70. If it was between 60, whatever, and 70, I want. So I'm okay with 70, but I wouldn't go wouldn't go below that.
Right.
Right.
So noted. Thank you.
Commissioner Stout?
Processing it. I mean, I understand, I agree with, I guess I'm not tied to a number just because what I would say, like, I get your point about the ABCD thing, but also like norm grading is a little different just across, I mean, again, like,
Yeah.
in some fields, a 6, you know, if I'm hitting for the Rockies, right, 30% is pretty damn good.
Right.
Right, I'm not saying it's the same thing, right? But what I would say is like, but I agree with the concept though of what is a reasonable, and also I think about like national partners, like what like-minded, like are we on the more rigorous side, or, and I'd frankly rather be on the more rigorous side of that than on, you know, like of the major metros in the country, we're the easy one to get a passing grade. That is where what raises most red flags for me, because frankly, I couldn't pass this exam, so I'm not you know, like, it's hard for me to like think about like, that's the perfect percent.
From the reading I've done, 70 seems to be sort of the national norm. But that's why the vendor cautions us by just going with arbitrarily with a score that's just a national norm, right?
Yeah.
Just because it's the norm may not necessarily be effective. But to me, it's not, the request isn't so much as the cutoff or the minimum score itself, but setting it beforehand. Like that is what I truly support, because I want everybody who competes for something to know what they're competing for, to know what they're aiming for. Now, police, on the other hand, has not made this a request. From my understanding, Jeanette Police is continuing to sort of, you know, let us leave it to us, and that is something that, you know, we can certainly revisit down the line, but right now, this was a request coming from fire, and that's why, you know, it's a prime opportunity to try what we haven't tried in a while.
Yeah, I agree, and that was gonna be my comment, as I think it's so important that we're not setting it after, once we see who scores, it makes it too arbitrary. And we need to be setting more consistent expectations there. I think previously we had expressed that sort of a concern as a commission. As for, you know, the cutoff, I mean, has there ever been a discussion about a pass-fail grade?
That is what the vendor, if I'm not mistaken, that is what the vendor is really aiming for, or like promoting, right? Jeanette, is a pass-fail determination, but even in a pass-fail, you're still setting a score. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? You gotta have a standard. You just don't release the score and not take it into consideration when you're ranking people, but that defeats the purpose of the ranking system of the promotional process.
So
Are we, sorry.
I just had another question, like the vendor, I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about.
Ergometrics is,
They
we have,
do the test.
they help us, yes, they won through competitive.
What's their interest in this? What's their interest in the cutoff score? I don't understand. They provide us the test, they administer the test or whatever. It's not really their role to determine what a cutoff score is and who
No.
passes or not. So what's their interest?
I think their interest is just more on a consultative basis, because they are sort of a leader in the industry. But because they won the competitive procurement to help us administer the test, sort of part of that council to let us know and give us the pros and cons based on what they're seeing nationally, based on their expertise and experience. But from what I read in their statement, which I will forward to you later, is they will support what we do, because at the end of the day, they do not.
They work for us.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, second, I mean, I'm just going by what you
No,
said. Like, I really take exception to the idea that you adjust passing scores to achieve diverse results. I don't like that. I don't like it at all, and I actually don't even think that that should ever be uttered again, because I don't believe in that. I don't understand that argument at all. From them. It's not for you to answer. I'm just
Right.
telling you, I just.
But what
don't
I,
like that.
what I will say is that has been shared with me, you know, as far as, because we also leverage, now they've merged, used to be separate, it's the same testing vendor when it came to our entry level, and I did say, you know, consistency is the key in setting a threshold, and if we determine that the threshold is adversely impacted, then we adjust it, but we cannot, like if, for example, there's an adverse impact that really is being shown to the arbitrary minimum score that we set, then we can take a look, come back to the table and see if it makes sense to adjust it. But I'm not personally, and then my team note, right? Like, I'm not in support of adjusting it in the middle. I just don't like adjusting the rules in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
And I want candidates to know what they're aiming for.
Yeah,
So,
but we're talking about two different things. I'm just trying to be as clear as I can be. I'm just one person. I'm just saying that if in fact having a minimum passing score results in diversity suffering, then we need to do some examinations about other things that we can do besides
adjusting.
changing the goalposts. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So,
Wholeheartedly support.
okay.
Commissioner Foster, did you have any comments?
No, I'm good. I'm tracking with the conversation. You know, I share some of the concerns that Greg has, but I think you guys are handling the conversation, so I don't need to add any more.
All right, so I did approve the request because we had to do the announcement and we, you know, so that's, you know, it's 70 minimum passing score set before the exam. And then I will come back here to give you the results on what that may look like once the examination is done.
Great.
And then no part of that is a decision coming to the commission on scores.
No,
I just want us to all hear that, because
Yeah, great.
promotional scores was something that we had weighed into previously, so we are no longer doing that.
Right, that was an adjustment we made months ago. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
and then for clarification also, the department does not even see the names of the folks in the results. I just wanna, Jeanette, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misstating something. The departments only see the scores.
Okay.
And from there determine how many is eligible based on how many there is a need to fill. They do not see the names.
So 10 people could pass, but department actually only has space for 5 promotions at the time, is that?
Jeanette?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I was just asking, like, okay, so 10 people could pass the promotional test. Do all 10 get promoted, or how does that actually work with the
They
department?
will all get promoted. They get put on they go through the assessment center, and then they're ranked at the assessment center by their scores, by their overall scores. And then usually they're all promoted. So right now we've exhausted that 2023 list for lieutenants. Well, I should say fire has.
So it's 2 years they
Correct.
work through that list. That's very helpful, thank you. I always
Correct.
wondered your piece.
So not all of them get may get promoted all at once. It depends on how many is the upfront vacancy and then through the remainder of the 2-year span. Right, Jeanette?
Correct. So usually fire lets us know how many people they're looking at, you know, just due to retirements, and then a few surprises here and there of folks who are leaving. So, you know, we used to aim to modify those numbers, but now with the cutoff score at being at 70%, if we have 50 people who move forward, then more than likely those 50 people will be on a list.
Okay. And then, sorry, one last clarification. You said they rank them based on their overall scores. Is the
Mhm.
overall score more than the test score?
So.
More than-
Can
Go ahead.
you move back one slide for me, please? Brendan? Okay, so you've got the multiple choice exam, the maximum score is 100. The weight of that is 32%. The assessment center has 3 subcomponents, but the total maximum score is 100, which is weighted at 62. And then you add all 3 components, that's where the max point value is 100 that they can achieve.
Thank you. That is the most thorough explanation we've received on this process, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
And I'm very grateful for Jeanette because I think she is tired of my 100,000 questions.
Thank you,
Oh, I
Jeanette.
think we've been over this several times. So it's starting to be a little bit more clear probably.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
All
Mhm.
right, now, moving along to the next topic at hand. I just wanted to come back to the table on the candidate experience survey. If you recall, I brought to you guys sort of a survey that was going to serve as our baseline data. And so this is just where we did the survey duration for 40 days. We did one initial email and then another reminder after 10 days. Out of over 500, only 23 responded. So in the grand scheme of things, this is a very minor or like a very, very small population of response. But I take the people who respond to surveys are the people who are invested in getting their voices heard or helping us improve. So I wanted to just bring if you recall, there were 9 total questions. Because the first question was what position you applied for. So just on these 2, I know it's tiny. So we had a total responded of 19 from the police and then a couple from lateral police and then a couple from fire entry level. So on the question, did the application process meet your expectation in terms of ease and user friendliness? You will see that 70% responded yes, and 30% responded no. Always we are a work in progress, but I think that's, for the people who took the time to respond, that's how they felt about this question. And then on the 5th, which is tied to our 2025 strategic goal, is how satisfied were you with the communication during the application process? And you will see that 35% were very satisfied, 35% were somewhat satisfied, and then you've got 22% somewhat dissatisfied, and then 9% are very dissatisfied. So if you took the very satisfied and somewhat satisfied, we're at 70%, which our goal of candidate satisfaction is at 80. So now that we have a little bit, I closed the baseline of this survey out, and then we will put a mechanism in place to send this survey now as we disposition candidates and work. So hopefully part of the responsiveness or lack of responsiveness in the survey is, we send it in January for people who applied in 2024, right? So they may not have interest anymore. So if we send the survey out more timely, within a shorter period of span from the time they end their process with us, then hopefully we can get better results. Also, from my understanding is that as you know, civil services is currently also being audited, right, for our hiring process. And I was informed that they also sent out a survey to candidates and they received over 100 respondents. So I just want to make sure that, we were doing it anyway, even if they weren't doing it, we were gonna do the survey, but I'm curious to see what that survey looks like versus what this initial data is. And then as we work towards more than the audit, it's really about improving the candidate experience and what our candidates are saying to our process by the end of the year, which is our goal is 80% candidate satisfaction survey.
Did they send the audit to the same list?
No,
No, because they're only auditing police.
no, they're auditing entry-level hiring. So they generated their own list
Of,
of candidates
from,
because the Workday applications. Yes.
okay.
Chris, do we know what their questions were?
We will when the audit is.
Curious too.
All right, but you know, like I said, I think that we're on the right track in trying to improve the candidate experience. Next slide, please. Some good news, process improvement update. We had some automation. Prior, the manual review of each application to confirm receipt of the background history questionnaire forms were done manually by our analysts. So after folks reviewed it, or after folks submitted it, our analyst would then go and look at each application and determine if they have in fact submitted it. So now that is automatically routed. When the candidate submits their history, their completed background, that's not background, yes, their completed background history questionnaire forms, then it automatically routes it and shows in our system that it's a background report received. So that means they don't have to filter through each application manually to then put them in a step that says we received it and then review it for what it needs to be reviewed. So I just appreciate the Workday team for working with us on that automation, because even if it's a minute or two saver, it's still a time saver. All right, next slide, please. Another process improvement update. Prior, just talking through the steps on between entry-level test, that NTN, the written test, and the background history questionnaire. So as you can see, we had 5 steps, 5 manual steps. So we would pull scores every 10 days. Then we would send the scores to Workday rep so that they can upload the scores for us. And then then we wait for the Workday rep to tell us that the scores have been uploaded. And then we move them to the next step, which is the written test complete or score not high enough or did not pass written test. And then we will review for the next step, which is either we invite them to complete the background history questionnaire form, or they might have applied too soon. So with the streamlined process, we've taken ownership of the uploading of the scores. We no longer send them to Workday. We pull the scores every other day. The Tech 2s are trained to look at the scores and the applications now, and they move them into the invited list, which is a step that our analyst no longer has to do in general. So if you look at it, streamlined process from 5 steps in more than 10 days down to maybe 5-7 days, and cut down to 3 steps. Okay.
Nate has a question. Is it possible to receive a public shareable version of this process flow sheet?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Is it possible to receive a public shareable version of this process flow sheet?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is, Nate.
Thank you.
But just so you know, I always send the executive director's report to the attendees, so it's public information. You always have them. All right, next slide, please. I'm gonna bore you with numbers. I get excited with them. I might be the only one, but hey. Process timelines update. So because when people look at data in all sorts of ways. So I decided to put the mean, median, mode, depending on where you lie, on where you like your statistics, right? So for police entry level, that is a current open requisition. So if we took the whole requisition, all applicants dating all the way back to maybe late August, September, right, Tammy? To current, so from the application date to written test complete, you're looking at about 21 days. But it's a lot of data. I sent it to y'all. Let's focus on the app date to suitability report received. So if you look at that, taking the applications, the entire requisition, because part of the applicant pool of this requisition is from last year, the average time that it took an application from application date to getting that non-medical job suitability report is 76 days. Now, if you take the median, if that is where your boat floats, it's 69 days, which is not far off. And in the interest of everybody, I did put in what the mean, median, mode particularly mean in the most simplistic terms. And then the mode is 53. So right about that ballpark of between 53 to 76 days. The sample size of that is 78 because I could only sample the ones that had gone all the way through suitability report. Now, the exciting piece is if we took just the applications from January 1st of 2025 through current, our sample size obviously dwindles down, but you will see now that for the 6 that has made it through the suitability, it took them 39.83 days on average to get to that piece, which is almost half of what it is for the whole population. But let's back up a little from the application date to written test, compare that first or that second column on the entire rec. We took the 21 days down to 7 to 8 days. That was the streamlined process that I just showed you earlier. The 5-step, we got it down to 3.
Lovely.
But keep in mind, there's parts of these that are candidate behaviors, and not all of this is just reliant on staff's ability to move people through. But I think the candidate's behavior improving as we're working towards improving our sort of processes as well. And with that combined, we should see some improvements in our timelines. So that is for police entry level. Now let's go on to the next slide. So this is EMT. So this one was a January rec. So that open and close. So this is the sample. If you take a look at it, from app to suitability report, that's 36 days. That's the entire, entire requisition pool as of now. It's closed, so it's not as skewed as the other, like it's not as complex as the other slide. So it's consistent to the data of the police, which tells you that the staff and the agency in general, plus our candidates, we're all working together to improve the timelines. And for fire, it's too soon because that was just a rec that closed on February 10th. But I'm confident that similar pattern will be observed. What I just want to point out is now we have better data because they're actually time-stamped reports. When we move people to a staff, we can now pull a report that shows the timestamp. It's not so much manual anymore. Like we can actually really see, for example, that automation, when it was received, when a staff member puts them on an invited list, there is a timestamp on when we put the invited list. So we can differentiate the times between we move candidates through the process internally and when candidates respond to the processes. It's still a work in progress, but Workday is really providing us the support that we need so that we can be better at our data. It can be more objective and straightforward.
So those timestamp, that timestamp data is in the computer.
Correct,
You don't
in
have-
Workday.
You don't have to pull it. Wow, that's great.
I-
Good job, y'all.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's, to me, it's a win because then, you know, as far as an agency performance, we can just reasonably say where we're at, and from a staff performance, you know, nobody has to guess what their performance
It's
is,
great.
so. But it's a work in progress, it's still not complete, but that's why it's only through suitability, but, you know, with the way that they're supporting us, I'm confident that they can, deliver on what we need.
And yeah, and again, another vendor and getting them to help us to serve our purposes, right?
No, this is in-house.
Well, right, is it,
Workday is from OHR.
but
Emmy.
Workday, are you, so you're working with, you're
Emmy.
working with OHR, not with Workday?
So Emmy is technically with the OHR, but she's
The Workday.
the Workday
expert.
expert for us and her team.
That's good, it's a tough program, so it's great.
But what she did say is that Workday has implemented sort of a, or assigned just me or a mechanism to where, like, if we had wish list and our internal city and county of Denver Workday folks maybe at their wits' end, that they have a channel now to go to get with a vendor to be able to sort of figure some of these things out.
Good.
So,
Good, it should.
all
Great.
right. Okay, next slide, please. That's it. Any questions?
That was great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your update.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to, this is our deliberative process vote.
Not yet, no,
Yeah.
item.
No, Noah was after. Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yep, we'll do votes, and then we'll talk about Swift. So. Commissioners in the room, sorry, Commissioner Foster. Get your votes ready.
All right. Ready?
Oh, wait. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, this is, yeah.
Yeah, you can just go.
Okay. So I'm gonna start with Commissioner Moore, Commissioner Miller, and then Commissioner Stout. All
You can
right.
just say more, Miller.
Okay. All right, now, I won't be disrespectful.
We won't.
Okay, you won't hold it against me. All right, it is on record. I'll call you by your last name. All right, starting with candidate 224548, Moore,
Fail.
Miller.
Yeah.
Stout,
Fail.
candidate 318377,
Fail.
Bet.
Fail.
candidate 44462.
Fail. Oh, pass.
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 No, I was gonna do
I was
computers.
gonna start, this is dying, so I'm like, pushing my.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
All
yes,
right, candidate 329847.
Pass.
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 Thank you. Candidate 240241.
Pass.
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 Candidate 273535.
Yes.
Miller.
I gave him my votes already. I can't.
Pass.
No, Foster can't vote.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, you're fine.
Okay, so I'm now at candidate 312223.
Pass.
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 Candidate 332270.
Pass.
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 Candidate 4594.
Pass.
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 Candidate 269951.
Pass.
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 Candidate 266004.
Pass.
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 Candidate 329080.
Pass.
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 Candidate 52844.
Pass.
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 Candidate Candidate 237-398.
Pass.
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 Candidate 328-684.
Pass.
Pass. And that concludes, and per the advice of our lawyer, we do not need to motion because the voting was done in open session.
Oh, I love it.
Moving along. Takes away the pressure of adding.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like they have in all of them.
I'm so sorry. But no,
Okay,
and then you guys bring it to adjourn.
all right.
Sounds good. So, I mean,
So our next item in the agenda is just a commissioner discussion on the state wildland inmate fire team or SWIFT program.
sparks a question.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's talking to you, great.
You said Chicago State Police.
So not the right. Better ask the question.
I'm gonna leave.
Okay, yes, yeah.
What did you do?
Yes, yeah, so, yeah, that's,
No pun
yeah,
intended, I
exactly,
suppose,
yes,
yeah.
it definitely intended.
Unintended.
Yeah, so I had been talking with some folks associated with the state wildland inmate fire team, and it actually, there was a piece in the Sun about this as well, talking about eligibility potentially for folks. And so the SWIFT program, it's a very, so essentially, if you are incarcerated, you go to what's called DRDC, they kind of do a placement for you. It's located here in Denver. And to my knowledge, I don't know if this is actually true as of today, but in recent years, the most popular program is this SWIFT program, where you have to be eligible for certain things. Now, you do have a criminal record, obviously, because you're in the system, but it's a process they go through, and something that a legislator had reached out to me who worked on some work related to this was just talking through potential eligibility for them if it would be considered either an exception or something if someone had gone through a specialized program, obviously had met other requirements as needed, because obviously right now they would not be eligible for that. And so it's interesting. It's something the state has spent a lot of time, money, and given a lot of publicity to. And these folks get out, and then and we're not alone in this, essentially have no ability to continue on. And they've done this training that would be everything that I've researched and talked to leaders in this are doing equivalent training, and potentially could be. Now, I'm not, today, I mentioned this to Grace Gracely, I'm not advocating for anything. I think it's worth a conversation and just like a look at, so I think about, are there specialized programs such as this, or someone, let's say they have a drug conviction or something like that, essentially that would render them ineligible to actually pursue this in the future. And I suspect, I shouldn't suspect anything. What I'm saying at this point is like, I would love just to have a conversation about it and kind of think about, are there programs such as this, the state or other entities create potential pipelines for not just us, but others? And are we unintentionally or intentionally, of course, closing off those options? And that's happy to have a fireside chat.
So the issue is that these inmates have been trained, have experience, but because they have a criminal record or felony conviction, they're ineligible to apply through the civil service process to become a fireman.
Yeah. And then they go through, and I mean, happy to go in detail, but they go through the same, according to their, and I did speak with their program administrator in preparation, but they do the same exact test. Like it's designed off of what the standards are, whether it be the exact firefighter training, the exact fitness standards, everything from there. And what is happening right now is that what they told me, and I think they also said this publicly, is that all of these, a lot of people like fighting fires privately in LA and things like that.
Right.
They're going that route. And that might make the most sense, honestly, because I also understand a private fire entity, right, is very different than someone that we entrust with all the things we do with fire. Not advocating, for anything at this point, but I think just something putting out there, and I do think that there was interesting journalism done around this that merits us to just, maybe this is the time that we keep an eye on this. Maybe, someone communicates with that program and say, maybe in 2 years, we'll retouch this or something like that. It was my same thinking, we just got through the marijuana piece, and that was something that, I think was like 3 years in the process. And if I recall at the time, there was actually a decent amount of opposition surrounding us around that. I think that, not saying we'll get there ever with this, but I think it's worth just like, not considering, just like investigating.
I would be happy to, get more information and more facts about that. It's complicated, obviously.
Oh, yeah, that's why I'm not like.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, because there are people that, because they've had a criminal record or whatever, they're not allowed to apply, right? But what's different here is, what's different here is that they actually have training and experience. It's worth talking about whether there should be some type of exception, or whether or not we could work with somebody to create a program, an ancillary program where they would be able to assist, like what you were saying about California or whatever, or private entities or something like that. But I'm a big believer in, if you do your time and you pay your debt, that you should not be able to reclaim some opportunities and some elements of being a citizen again, right?
Yeah.
Like voting and stuff like that. So
And what
very interesting.
And again, just thinking aloud, but I think that also if there were to be any discussions around this, certainly one thing I would consider is there are different types of felonies, for instance,
Correct.
right?Here it's like, I do think that if there are positions of trust, if someone, for instance, had I've represented people that have felonies in drug possession that would not be felonies today, right?
Right.
And if someone like that, certainly they go through other processes to get that cleared, et cetera. But I think that to me, it's about the public trust,
Right.
right? Because we do place people in this, and if there's nothing we can do that we could ever get anyone from this program that would be able to be in a position of public trust, then I'm not supportive.
Right.
But I think if there are examples, and I'm not creative enough at this point to really think through it all the way, but if there are examples where someone with a conviction such as this, who previously would be barred from this, but reasonably could enter into a position or an assistance of a position that does absolutely involve the public trust, I think it's worth a discussion.
I agree.
So,
Great.
Commissioner Foster.
Did he sign up already?
Sorry, I got to work the mute button. Go ahead. What was the question?
Oh, no, just I was prattling on and wanted to make sure if you had any questions or just thoughts or comments.
No, I think it's a wonderful program. I've been looking at it quite a bit. I'm just not sure how it gets executed. I'm not clear on all the details on all of it.
And that's and to be fair, like that's something I had reached out to their, and this funny is this actually was like I had been thinking about this on something else and had talked to a legislator, and then there were some people asking questions related to this. And I had reached out just to an administrator on it, and they kind of said, "Well, what do you want to know?" And they said, "I need to talk to my administrator," and things like that. I just said, I'm just more, it's a general inquiry. I don't have any particular motives at this point. But yeah, I would like, essentially, I guess I would say, if it's okay with commission, just get some more information on it.
Yeah, totally fine with me.
Yeah, I think it's a program that has a lot of merit, Noah, and I think it's fantastic to look at it. Absolutely everybody needs second chances, and you should earn your way towards that. So, I mean, whatever we can do to try and support something like this would be fantastic. If we can.
Mhm.
So, I'll put it on a docket for like some continued revisit maybe in a few months to kind of see, maybe somebody can come in and give us more information, just as a point of discussion, like to your point, I mean, my personal take is in the immediate now is somewhat like not a huge push because of the amount of interested parties that are applying for the
Agreed.
job compared to the availability of the job, right? What I'm personally curious about is if they're part of this program and they serve their time and they get out, are they still part of that team? And if something were to happen, like a massive wildfire in Colorado, are they still able to work through that and still serve the community outside of being firefighters in the immediate? So those are my points of interest, like, and what that may look like. Is it in the entry level pool, or is it an ancillary program? So I think it's worth a discussion just to kind of keep the conversation alive. Because I did, what I did tell the person who reached out is it's also something, whenever somebody asks us to look at something, it's worth a discussion at the very least to ensure that
I agree.
we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's. So appreciate the combo. Thank you, Noah.
No problem.
Do you want to move to the staff? Full members,
You're the honorary,
honorary.
since we're down president and vice president, I'm just gonna
I'm just going into
to Greg.
clockwise. Greg, to the last item on the agenda.
Comments from staff and public?
Yes.
Floor is open. Everyone muted?
I don't think we have any public on. I think we just have staff.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
we do have.
Oh, do we? Okay. Oh, yeah, there's lots of folks. Never mind. I couldn't see it for a minute.
Questions, comments, anything like that? Any thoughts to share?
Can I ask a question for a future, can I make a request for a future agenda item, kind of like an informational piece? I'd be curious to learn a little more between the interaction between Department of Safety agencies and the Ranger program at the state level. As I understand it, kind of like a reserve force that's I'm not entirely clear on, and they
Hey.
I know. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Grace, there's a question from an Officer McGee in the
Yeah,
chat.
he was asked- Where is it?
I saw a hand pop
Never
up.
mind. I have many questions. I'll get with Tammy or Noel offline. So thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good to hear them.
Are you sure? I'm not sure of that. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I'll ask. One of the questions for us personally is with the new NTN exam changing, we're kind of getting some conflicting signals whether there's a 90-day wait period to retake that exam. So can we just get some clarity on that?
So Nate, the NTN exam, because the requisition has applicants from 24 and 25, right? So those that applied in 2024 most likely took the old exam, right?
Correct.
And so if they wanted to test using the new exam, because those two exams are two different exams, they could have taken the 2024 test on December 28th and easily taken the new test as of January 1st, because those are two different exams. But those who has taken the current exam, it's the same rule as it was before. You have to wait 90 days to retest.
All right, I'm clear on that. Thank you.
You said you had lots of questions.
Exactly, yeah.
That was only one.
Yeah,
There's only
I'll-
one.
I'm gonna hold my tongue. So I thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else? I can't see hands, so if there are any other hands up, Steve, or, okay.
No, I can't. I don't see any.
All right. I get to speak twice, okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Right, motion passes and we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Hit that button.